and this second presentation will be done here. Will be done by the company Boa Concept, which is a French company. It will be presented conjointly by Ms. Nawel Bekkaye and Dr. Jean-Lucien Rascle. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Are you here? Can you open your mic, maybe your video, and share your screen?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I'm gonna share.
And we can see you too.
Perfect. Okay, so let's go. I'm going to start to introduce Boa Concept companies. The theme of this presentation is servitization. So Boa Concept is a company founded in 2012. The main idea of the company is a smart modular conveyor, which was designed by Jean-Lucien Rascle and Chantal Ledoux, which are the founders. In 2019, we made 9 million euros of turnover for 47 people. So just to show you how works our installation and what is a conveyor, I'm going to share with you this video. I hope everything is running well. So you can see in this video that there is a conveyor. The main job of a conveyor in a warehouse is to carry load from one point to another one. Products will stop in different areas where people are going to make some tasks like picking products in parcels, like labeling, scanning, and things like that. I'm not sure that the video is running very well because in my screen it's quite bad, but anyway, let's go in the other slide because I think the video is not the better idea. I will show you some pictures. It's going to be easier. Okay, just stop and go on, please. Okay, so in pictures, I think it's going to be easier. You can see here an installation we made for the company Amelin. This company is a leader in Europe for all the papers and things like that for schools. Here you can see 32 sorting lane, and we also install in this warehouse in Germany 4 picking tower just to pick some parcels and put it on the conveyor. Another installation, Orexed, it's a company with a lot of references, so there is a lot of picking station where you can see operators picking products and put it on the line and go on the conveyor. So the most important thing before present the servitization is an overview of the traditional system. Traditional systems are developed with everything is specifically tailor-made for an installation. So the lengthy electrical wiring is made for the installation you build, and it will be not the same for another installation. Another thing, most of the parts are assembled on the site, on the client site, and not on the warehouse. So you have you spend a lot of time in your client site for install the PLC, all the in-out control system. That's why this kind of installation are not easy to move, are not easy to modify. What we do with the plug and carry, we found an answer which is not a mechanical answer. In fact, it's more an informatical and logarithm answer. This answer is standard module with each element have its all electronic cards that offer faster installation thanks to pre-wired and pre-tested elements. The plus that you can see here means, in fact, in each element from 1 or 2 or 3 meters, you have an electronic card, its own intelligence, and its own wired system. All this all this manufacturing is made in the workshop of Boa Concept and not on the client side. That means when you arrive in the client side, you just have to plug all those standard elements, and the embedded intelligence works automatically. More, you don't have PLC anymore. You only have the WMS of the clients, which is directly connected to the conveyor. Another information, it's thanks to electronic cards, you already have each element is already known by the WCS supervisor. That means when you have to parameter the line, you don't have much things to do. The modules are already settled, plugged, and you just have to switch on the line to launch it. You have this kind of recognition that appears on your screen on the computer, and this kind of line in the warehouse. Okay, I'll go too fast. Just 1 second, sorry. Okay, so the cost allocation now. In all installation, traditional and innovative installation of conveyor, you have 4 main parts. Where the costs are distributed. Sorry. The first one is project management and studies, mechanical studies, electrical studies, and IT studies. The second one is the material part, so hardware and the assembly. Then you have the mounting on sites, and you have the commissioning, the launching of the installation. In a traditional one, you can see this kind of repartition. That means when you want to move or to modify your installation, you can only save 33% of the installation represented by the hardware. The studies have to be remade another time. The same thing for the mounting and commissioning, because your system is made for one installation and it's not made to have some evolution. In the plug and carry system, it's quite different. The hardware, as you can see, is a little bit more expensive. You have 31% of the total cost that is included in the hardware. You have the workshop assembly, about 31%, that also can be saved in case of modification. That means you can save in case of modification or moving 72% of the value of your installation. That represents some advantages. As you can see in this one, for a traditional installation, there is no sense to move or modify your installation, because you are gonna to spend 20% of the global price in mounting and dismounting of the installation. It's totally different with the plug and carry system, because the cost for moving the installation is about 30% of the amount of the global installation, thanks to pre-wired, pre-tested, and embedded intelligence in each element. There is other advantages to the plug and carry system, to smart modular conveyor. If you can modify or move the conveyor for cheaper, you also can start with a smaller installation and then modify it when your growth or when your needs evolve. That means if you choose to work with a standard and with a traditional installation, you will have to think your installation for 5 or 10 years. with a modular conveyor, you can build it as your growth or needs evolve. That means you also reduce the cost of mistakes. If you made a mistake on the first installation, you can correct it with the next one for a lower costs. Then, if you want to go further, we can imagine the innovative line can also be rent. That means you can move a conveyor. You also can rent the conveyor, but you have some difficulties if you rent the conveyor. The first one is there is not a lot of difference with a loan. That means you will have to pay each month maturities of your loans, or you have to pay your rent if you rent the conveyor. So it's not, maybe it cannot be very interesting, and people will not be very interested in. And more, at the end of a loan, the customer owns the conveyor. It's not the case if you rent an installation. You will never own the conveyor, and the manufacturers say keep the property of a conveyor. But if you go further, you can imagine not renting the conveyor, but rent the service. And here the service is carry a parcel in a warehouse. And at this time, you have a lot of advantages. The first one is you can target bigger markets because you can address smaller companies. These smaller companies are not in the main market because they cannot afford this kind of installation, but they can rent it. The second point is you have a better link with your customer. Better link because you maintain the installation, so you are in the warehouse. You can detect new requirements too. You can propose new services to your client because you are here. You can see what he needs in its exploitation every day. Another point is the decision level is not the board of directors because it's not an investment. It's an operational cost. Like you pay your electricity, your internet connection, you pay your service for the conveyor. And to go further, you have some challenges inside your company to provide these kinds of services, the service to carry a parcel in a warehouse. The first one is you need to have large value in equity or debt because the manufacturer keep the property of the system. The other one is the customer must be got used to the idea. He paid just to carry a product from one point to another. He will never own the property of the system. So you have to educate the markets on this idea. Then you have to train your sales team because it's not the same selling service than selling a conveyor system. You don't sell the technology at this time. You sell the using of the conveyor. And another point, you also have to train your staff to maintain equipment. They have to be able to detect new needs in the client warehouse. And they have to be able to advise the clients and then to give those information to the commercial staff, which have to be trained to be able to sell additional services to the customer. That means you have to change your business model and to change the mindsets of your staff too. To be able to detect this kind of new requirements, of new needs from your clients. And to conclude, the other advantage is you can find and detect new requirements of the global markets because you spend a lot of time in your client warehouse. That's why you can develop other services over kind of servitization for other products. Thank you. And if you have any question.
Thank you, Ms. Bekkaye, for this presentation. was very interesting. So now we enter a question session of around 10 minutes, a bit less than 10 minutes. Don't hesitate to ask in the slides. In the chat questions. We've got first one that is for regarding the first presentation, more precisely, Professor Boucher. The question is, can you provide an example of what you call value assessment in slide 14?
Yes, thank you, Audrey. Yes, the question was wondering on the type of value we could deliver in that type of approaches. When you develop a smart PSS solution, of course, there is always questions for the stakeholders, the industrial partners, which are economical issues, including for the customer. So this remains a very important issue for decision making. However, with product service systems, there is a lot of opportunities to enlarge the vision of the value. So today we are, as a research work, considering really different dimensions of the value for all the stakeholders, including ecological value, but also social value of the systems. There are also other exchange of values between the actors linked to data, for example, and also values linked to the brand image of the company, which can bring some added value to some of the partners. So currently, we try to enlarge in our work the way to assess value to all these dimensions. For industrial collaboration, currently the two main aspects which are really considered, in my opinion, are the economic value, how to share the economic value in a win-win relationship between all the partners, together with the more ecological value. Societal impacts can be considered when they really can bring something on the organization of work. For example, when you're working on a manufacturing component sold as a smart PSS, but it can bring through flexibility some added value in the working conditions of the operators. In that case, yes, it can be also considered. So this was for first question.
Yes, the second question was more for Boa Concept, and it was partially answered in the chat. It was why can you address smaller companies better with servitization than with renting? In the end, the price they pay will be more or less the same. Dr. Rascle answered partially in the chat. Maybe Ms. Bekkaye, do you want to add some other elements? And I think this question raises another question that maybe Professor Boucher you could also address, is there a link between the size of the company and the servitization? Is it easier to address to smaller or larger company with servitization, or not necessarily?
Okay. what I can say on that point, adaptation to the context of the company. The first point is that this adaptation to the precise context of the company is really important to consider. In each company, there is a cultural distance from servitization and from digitalization, which are really important to consider. So it's really a transition process, and what is required is to be able to diagnose this transition process, to diagnose the initial situation and the distance to be covered, to go toward that decision. So I cannot say that it is easier for one type or the other company. What you find, for example, in big company, most of the time the digital culture is perhaps more developed, but it's not a generality. In some small, medium-sized company, they are very already digital oriented. So you cannot make generalities. In huge company, generally, you can have more staff dedicated to strategical change management or to organizational issues management. Whereas in small, medium-sized company, well, you perhaps don't have all the staff for that. So all that has to be considered. So the transition can be more difficult. But today, for small, medium-sized company, we do consider that it is fully necessary. There are a lot of examples today, so it can be a success depending on the way you manage it. And a third point is that you really can find in your ecosystem some help to go in the transition. Not only from universities like us, but also there are some specialized expertise centers. There are today consulting companies quite competent on these issues. So it really has to be diagnosed, and I cannot answer more black or white, yes or no.
Thank you for your answer.
I can see a question on
yes, I see there
mass approach and production rate heavy industry.
There is also one question asked for Boa about how do you manage maintenance? Do you manage maintenance the same way as with classical selling? If you could give some elements.
I'm sorry, just can you repeat the question, because I have some problem with the sound.
Sorry. Do you manage maintenance the same way as with classical selling? So the question is, since you rent the material, what about the maintenance?
It's in fact, it's quite different. It's the same way to manage the maintenance, but it's the time for an intervention which is reduced when we rent, because we also sell the service of an intervention in, for example, 24 hours or 48 hours to our clients. When we sell, we have a maintenance engagement, which is quite different. We can maintain the installation, in fact, 2 times per year when we sell the conveyor. It's preventive maintenance that we do in our client sites. When we rent, we have the obligation to make our intervention in 24 or 48 hours, depending of the localization of the client site, of course. So it's a little bit different, but the service provided is the same. The quality of the service is the same.
Well, thank you for your answer, sir. Thank you to both of you for the presentation. I think we'll move on to the next part of the afternoon with our group discussion. The presentation were very interesting, and the answers also clarified a lot of points. So thank you very much for your participation.
You're welcome.